Yes, welcome to DC Economics. So I'm going to take you through the quantity theory of money. This is among the topics in intermediate macroeconomics. According to the quantity theory of money, the general price level of goods and services is proportional to the money supply in an economy, assuming the level of velocity is constant. So it is given by taking MV is equal to PY, where M represents the money supply, V is the velocity, and PY times Y is the nominal GDP or the real GDP. So when the velocity is kept constant, money supply is directly proportional to the nominal GDP. So according to the quantity theory of money, the general price of level of goods and services is proportional to the money supply when the velocity is constant. According to the quantity theory of money, if the amount of money in an economy doubles equals to price level will also double. So when the amount of money increases with a certain unit amount, also the price level will increase with the same amount as it has increases in the money. So the quantity theory of money is a simple theory linking the inflation rate to growth rate of the money supply. So inflation rate and the growth rate of money has got some different relationship that enable to explain on the effects on how the quantity theory of money operates. Now let's begin by looking at the concept of velocity. Velocity is given by the T over M, that T represents out the value of the transaction and M represents out the money supply. So M represents out the money supply, T is the value of transaction. So in one way or another, V is equal to P nominal GDP over money supply, where P is the price of output and Y is the quantity of output, and PY is the nominal GDP. In economics, money demand is given by taking the leading money balances the purchasing power of the money supply. So a simple money demand function is given by taking capital and Y, whereby K represents the capital and Y represents the output. So K represents how much money people wishes to hold for each dollar of income, and whereby capital is exogenous variable. It's like to say that it is an independent variable that gives effect to the endogenous variables. So money demand as a function of capital and output is given as MP raised power of D is equal to KY. So in order for output, in order to produce an output, we need to apply capital. We need to apply some input factor of production to enable the output to occur. So we try to look on the connection between the money theory equation, that is MV is equal to P times Y, whereby K is equal to 1 over V. So K represented when people hold lots of money relative to their income. K, money changes hands frequently, that velocity is low. So MV is equal to PXY, whereby velocity is kept constant or exogenous. So when the velocity is kept constant, money supply has a direct relationship with nominal GDP, as you can observe. So when money supply increases with a set amount, also the price of the nominal GDP increases with the same amount. So money supply here determines the nominal GDP, that is P times Y, as you can observe. So what you need to understand is that the real GDP is determined by the economy supplies, the supplies of capital and labor, together with and the production function. So the price level is given by taking the nominal GDP over daily GDP, where nominal GDP is given by taking price times Y over the daily GDP. So nominal GDP is a type of GDP that is affected with is not adjusted with inflation. And the real GDP, this is the GDP that is adjusted with any effects of changing of price. So let's try to discuss on the quantity equation in the growth rate. So the growth rate of a product is equal to the sum of the growth rates that we take out the quantity equation that is given by changing of money times change of velocity is equal to change of price times changing of output level. So the quantity of money assumes that velocity is constant. So any changes of money supplies affect the nominal GDP. So the change of velocity over V is constant, that is given is equal to 0. So the change of money supply over M is equal to change of velocity is equal to the change of price over P plus change of output over Y. So this is the quantity equation that we have actually shown effects respectively to their money supply and output level. So from change of money supply plus change of velocity is equal to change of price over price times change of output over output, whereby the change of velocity is equal to 0. So the inflation rate will be given as the changing of price over P. So since the inflation rate is given by changing of price over P, it's like to say now our equation will become change of money over M plus change of velocity. The velocity that is 0 because it is kept constant. Then instead of plugging change of P over P, we plug in inflation that represents the effect of changes of price. Then we plus change of output level in the economy. So in order to find the inflation rate, we make the subject pi, which represents the inflation rate. That will be given as taking the change of money supply. So we minus change of output level on the left-hand side. So inflation rate will be equals to changing of money supply over changing of output level. So you need to understand here, changing of money supply as a positive relationship with inflation, whereby changing of output level as negative relationship, as negative relation to inflation rate. So when the change of money supply increases, inflation rate increases, and when it decreases, it also inflation rate decreases. But change of output level when decreases, inflation increases. It's like to say it has got a negative relationship. So there is a negative relationship between the changing of output level and inflation. So the change of output level depends on the growth of the changing of output level depends on the growth in the factors of production, but also in the technological progress as well, and the technological progress. So for that case, hence we can say that the quantity theory of money, the quantity theory of money predicts that a one-for-one relation, the quantity of money predicts a one-for-one relation between changes in money supply, between the changes in the money growth rate together with the change in the inflation rate. So the quantity of money predicts one-to-one relation between the change of money growth rate and the change in the inflation rate. Let's discuss the concept of seigniorage. So seigniorage, this the revenue raised by printing money. So to spend more without raising taxes or selling bonds, the government may decide to print money. So when you print money, you actually develop an environment for increasing of price level, that is inflation. So the inflation tax that the printing money to raise revenue causes inflation. So inflation is like a tax on people who hold money. Now let's try to look some simple example on how we can apply the quantity theory equations on solving different problems. So velocity is constant and money is growing 5% per year, and output is growing 2% per year, and the nominal, the real interest rate is given as 4. Now we're required to solve the nominal interest rate. And B, you're required to solve if the Fed increases the money growth rate by 2 percentage point per year, find the changing of nominal interest rate. And part C, suppose the growth rate of output falls to 1 percentage per year. What will happen to the inflation rate? What will happen to the inflation rate? Suppose the growth rate of output falls to 1 percentage per year. What will happen to the inflation rate? But also, what must the Fed do if it wishes to keep the inflation rate constant? So how can we solve this kind of problem? So we're required to solve the nominal interest rate to show how the Fed, when the Fed increases money growth rate by 2 percentage point per year, what will be the changing of nominal interest rate? But also, suppose the growth rate of output falls to 1 percentage per year, what will happen to inflation rate? And what must the Fed do if it wishes to keep the inflation rate constant? Solution. So remember, at part A, we're required to solve the nominal interest rate. So we're required to solve out the nominal interest rate that is given as I. But also, we have the real interest rate, and the velocity is kept constant that the change of V over V is equal to 0. The real interest rate is equal to 4. And money was growing, the money growth was 5%. But also, the what is known as the output level. The output level was 2% growing. The output growth was 2%, but the interest rate was 4. So from our formula, nominal interest rate is given by taking out nominal interest rate, that is I, is given by taking the real interest rate plus inflation rate. But remember, the real interest rate we are given in the data set, that is 4. So real interest rate is equal to 4. Pi represents the inflation rate. So we need to know how could we obtain the pi, the inflation rate. Since we have the real interest rate and we are required to solve the nominal interest rate, how could we find pi, the inflation rate? So for the first step, when we take out the nominal interest rate, that is given as taking 4. So nominal interest rate is given by taking 4. And the inflation rate is given by taking the change of money supply. So the inflation rate is given by taking the change of money supply over L, then then minus changing of output over Y. Since we have the changing of money gross, the money supply, that is 5%. That is 5%. So this will be equals to inflation rate will be equals to 5%. Then minus change of output level, that is the change of output level, that is 2%. So I hope here this is 2, not 3. So it is 5 minus 2. That will give out 3%. So the money supply is 5% and the output level is 2%. So this will exactly give out 5 minus 2, that is 3. So the answer will be equals to 3. So let's come take out formula. nominal interest rate is equal to real interest rate plus inflation rate. So nominal interest rate will be equals to 4, then plus inflation rate, that is 3. So nominal interest rate will be equals to 7%. So nominal interest rate will be equals to 7%. So that is part A. So nominal interest rate is equal to 7%. So we're required to solve part B. So from part B, if the Fed increases money growth rate by 2 percentage point per year, find the change of nominal interest rate. So remember, inflation rate is given by taking changing of money supply minus changing of output level. So since the Fed increases the money growth rate by 2%, this means that the money growth, when it increases, also the inflation rate will increase, since the change of money supply or money supply has a positive relationship with inflation. So when money supply increases by a certain amount, also inflation will increase. So if the Fed increases money growth rate, this means that the inflation rate will increase with the same amount of increase of a money growth rate. So changing of nominal interest rate will be equal to 2, which will lead to the same increase in the money growth rate by 2%. So remember, the changing of money supply has a positive relationship with inflation. In another way, we say money supply has a positive relationship with inflation. So when money supply increases, inflation goes up. And we need to remember that the output level, the change of output level has a negative effect on inflation rate. So when the output level decreases, inflation increases. And when it decreases, inflation increases, and vice versa is true. So that is how we solve at part B. So let's look at part C. So for part C, suppose the growth rate of output falls to 1% per year. What will happen to the inflation rate? So since the inflation rate is given by changing of money supply over changing of output level, this means that when the money, suppose the growth rate of output falls, this means that the inflation will, if failed, if the central bank will act nothing, this means that the change of inflation rate will also increase by the same proportional amount. So since the changing of money supply is given as changing of money supply minus changing of output level. So remember, if the inflation is kept constant, this means that any reduction of changing of money supply will lead to the increase to the reduction also of the inflation rate. So there is a positive relationship between the money supply and inflation rate. So that is how we do. So that will be the part of inflation. So the change of inflation is in order to prevent of the function is given. So in order to prevent the inflation rate from rising, that the inflation rate should be constant. Now the central bank or the Fed must reduce what is known as the money growth rate by 1%. So in order to prevent the inflation from rising, Fed or the central bank must reduce the money growth rate by 1% point per year. So that is how we do. So that's the end. So I welcome you to this economics. Don't forget to subscribe and watch on other videos. Bye bye.